Greetings, America, on this Friday afternoon, the 6th of November. Um, Ordinarily, I was going to try and wait before I decided to make another video dedicated to Let's Talk Episode 3. Give people some time to maybe check out my other videos, maybe post some responses so that I would have something to comment to. But uh, tragically, at the better guidance of smart people like my therapist and the likes of Joe Rogan and Michael Rosenbaum, I made a critical mistake this morning, and I made the critical mistake of getting on social media, specifically Instagram, and the very, very first post that popped up in my feed was from an actor I follow. Uh, I enjoyed a project he was on, and therefore, my wife convinced me to follow actors like that because you get updates on projects they're doing and whatnot if you enjoyed their acting, and you could follow them to other projects. This one particular actor, like so many other celebrities, has chosen to be a bit of a political activist, if you will. And it's one thing to have an opinion. It's one thing to voice your opinion, if you will. But from the world I look at, the way that I view the world through my own personal lens, his he's rather fanatical, rather militant, and he's about as far left as you can get versus trying to get anywhere near the center. I would almost go as far as to say he's part of a belief system that would strive to see us even more divided, which I don't want to use the word scare because I think it carries too heavy of a tone, but it worries me. Not so much that he's a celebrity, because he's not like up there with like Matthew McConaughey or George Clooney, but the fact that there's so many like him, so many celebrities that are left of center and taking such militant, fanatical views. And, to keep it rather simple, all he did was basically post a meme, but it was a meme of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I'm going to paraphrase, because the meme was a picture of her and then it had a bunch of words. I'm going to paraphrase the hell out of this, so don't try to quote me on accuracy. But basically, it was, it doesn't matter about the president. What really matters is the corrupt institution that is homophobic, xenophobic, basically just anti everything but what the left supports. In the interest of being completely fair and objective, here's what I will say. I disagree with AOC and the squad from a political position. I don't support their radical policies and their extremely progressive ideologies. What I do admire is the passion, is the fire in the belly. And I mentioned this in my previous video. In my mind, that's exactly what America's about. Is you get up off your ass, and if you have a problem and you feel so passionately about it, you do something about it. And that's exactly what she has done. I may not like what she stands for, but I admire the tenacity and the fact that other people have equally admired it, and they have chosen to re-elect her, which means in that district, she clearly represents the majority of what people are thinking and feeling. And that's what America's about. I don't have to like what she stands for, but I can at least admire the drive and the passion. And the other thing I don't like is whether she's partly responsible for this, or celebrities, or whoever's responsible. I'm not going to begin to go down the QAnon conspiracy path, but this whole tribal thing, this, again, if you go back to my first video, I was like, hey, let's just come together. Let's try to find a way to meet in the middle, regardless of our political thoughts or our ideological thoughts or our opinions. Let's see if we can find more common ground. Even if we just come together and discuss things, that we disagree on. Do we have to divide ourselves so far where, if we believe in different things, I have to go as far as to suggest you're less than human, that you're actually the antithesis of good, you're actually evil. If you're somebody who believes in the divine, then I'm suggesting you're in league with Satan because we differ severely in our beliefs. And that's the type of rhetoric I think is very dangerous and harmful, because what concerns me the most is the fact that it seems like who or whomever it is striving for division. And if we look at the span of history, empires rise and they fall. I don't want to categorize America as an empire. I don't want to go that far. But America as it is, as imperfect and flawed as it is, we rose. We can fall if we're not careful. If we don't protect ourselves, we can fall. And that's what scares me, is losing our identity, losing our way of life. Because history has demonstrated it can and it will happen. The French Revolution, the British Empire finally got reduced to nothing more than the United Kingdom. These things do happen. And it scares me because whether it's outside actors, attempting to heavily influence it or not, history will prove that, societies can rise and societies can fall. And typically, anybody who has studied history and has studied mankind, they typically fall from within, from dissidents from within. Now, whether somebody is attempting to make that happen or a group of somebodies is attempting to make that happen, we're on track. All right, we're on schedule to make it happen all by ourselves, because for whatever reason we're getting into these tribal camps. You're either a Democrat or a Republican. Because notice, you don't hear anything about the Green Party. You don't hear anything about independents, libertarians, or the Constitution Party. They're being so drowned out, by, the media. I'd love to do a video on that, because I had to write a paper for college where I discuss, how the media is privately owned and privately operated as a result of the First Amendment of the Constitution, but that's not the purpose of this video. I'm really hoping this video can stimulate some discussion, because like everybody else, I'm somewhat disappointed in the election. Whether it's the perceived results or the overwhelming perception of fraud. And we don't have to agree on whether you believe there's fraud or not, because I think the hardest thing to do is argue against somebody's belief. Because once you commit to a belief system, whether it's confirmation bias or scomaktia, your mind actively seeks out evidence to support your line of thinking. I just look at the overwhelming reported cases of actual ballots either being found at the last minute or ballots being found in dumpsters. And the reason I bring that up is because of this. This whole COVID pandemic, right? I'm not trying to make this video an argument over COVID. If you want to discuss that, let me know and we can discuss it. What I think has happened was political institutions, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. I personally think it's the Democrats, but we can disagree on that if you want. Preying upon the fears of a portion of the American populace over the pandemic, thus, in order to accommodate their fears, necessitating this mail-in ballot. The original concept was absentee ballots, absentee voting for U.S. citizens stationed abroad, specifically your military. We have military stationed in Europe, we have military stationed in Asia, we have military deployed where, to include if they're stationed at their home base is not necessarily where they're from. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. So therefore, when I did finally get involved in voting, I had to fill out absentee ballots for the state of Illinois because I wasn't back in the state of Illinois. So that was the original concept. So you take this pandemic, you insert the fear, and you exacerbate the fear, and then you come up with this mythical solution of mail-in balloting, And there's been already too many reported cases of potential fraud with ballots being dumped in the garbage and whatnot. So I said it yesterday in my video that I do believe both candidates have just cause in suggesting foul play. Due to the overwhelming media support, the celebrity support, the institutionalization of collective thinking that, from the way I perceive the world, seems to be left-minded thinking. I mean, you go to almost every news agency, and it's, with the exception of like Fox News and maybe a couple others, the overwhelming support and narratives, driven support is left-minded thought, democratic-minded thought. So the fact that we all of a sudden have some conflict, some potential fraud with our voting system doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Unfortunately, I'm one of those where the hindsight's 2020. Going into the election, I had a lot of faith that it'll be super easy, because I went the first day of voting. The first day of early voting, I went. I made that critical mistake, and I spent 3.5 hours in line to cast my ballot. But that's because there were so many of us willing to do our civic duty, that so many of us showed up in person. So looking at the world through that lens, if so many of us could get off of our ass, wait in line for 3.5 hours, more or less, to cast our ballot in person, how is it we have millions of people that magically cast their ballot through the mailing system? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just, it raises certain questions based on the number of people that actively participated in live voting. And again, we don't have to agree. We can still discuss it. And that's ultimately the goal. If this provokes any thought, if this provokes any conversation, so be it. I do not think Biden and Harris are the best choice. Therefore, I didn't vote for them. Unfortunately, I didn't see any alternative candidates, and while I may not be the biggest fan of how Trump conducts himself, I at least appreciate some of the things he's done. When we were in the military, when I was in the military, we had a phrase, that's the guy you keep in case of war. You just can't put him on liberty. If you never served in the military, you wouldn't understand. But the bottom line is, we used to have guys in the service who were really great at the military stuff, but when you gave them time off to go be themselves, they would always get in trouble. So it's like, if you can keep them busy doing military stuff, they wouldn't get in trouble. I equate that to Trump, where Trump's one of the guys who can do all these great things, but then it's like, okay, now it's time to speak to people, and then he sticks his foot in his mouth, or he gets on Twitter and he bombs. So I'm going to try to wrap this up because I don't want these videos to be too long. I also don't think Biden's going to survive. If Biden actually does become the presidential elect, I don't think he's going to survive his term. And I got two potential theories as to why. First theory is the whole theory depends on the Democrats not really caring about him. That ultimately the Democrats are going to put everything behind Kamala Harris, because she's a female person of color. So it's like a tremendous win for the Democratic Party. I think if Biden does become the president-elect, before his term is over, he'll either be forced to resign for non-compos mentis, or he'll be forced to resign over the whatever's going on with him and his son. I think there's way too much viable evidence there that he's heavily involved in something. In which case, as far as the Democrats go, it's a win-win regardless, because then Kamala takes over, and as far as I know, somebody can dispute this, somebody can correct me on this, as far as I know, since she's not the elected president, that doesn't count against her. Therefore, she gets to run for 2 more terms if she has to take over in the absence of Joe Biden. So just keep that in mind. I think that's where this is going. And for some of you, that might be exactly where you want it to go. But I don't believe the Democrats are the solution. And if necessary, I can make another video in response to that. Please feel free to leave a comment, leave a question, respond. Let's do what I think we can do. Let's be better than tribal allegiances. Let's get back to this dream that is America, and let's talk out our differences and try to find where we can meet in the middle. That's all I got.